food labels so you know what you're looking at, and watching out for the misleading ones. And then, because there are a lot of misleading, you walk into a grocery store, I feel like it's a jungle. I just finished reading this book. It's a book called The Kitchen Counter Cooking School. Has anyone ever read it or heard of it? It's a fun read, and it's by Kathleen Flynn. I'll put it in the notes then. And what she does is teaches 9 culinary novices, transforming them into fearless home cooks. So Margie, this could be a fun read for you, and one where you can also just learn as you go along. But one of the things that she talks about maybe toward the end of the book is how grocery stores are set up to get you. You know,
I bet.
really get you. They look at every inch of shelf space and maximize the dollar value they can get out of that. So they want to lure you into buying and eating foods that are going to have you wanting more. So lots of times when they put what I learned that I didn't know is they have a vested interest when they prepare foods in making multiple flavors come together, because those multiple flavors don't fill you up as much. They make you want more. It's kind of an odd concept compared to having just a meal of simple foods, like say grilled chicken breast and some broccoli and sweet potato. Whatever it is that they combine together in some kind of a packaged meal, they will add all different kinds of flavorings to that, and your taste buds just go crazy, and your taste buds don't get as satiated, and you in that way get trained. And this is what happens to children, right? They get their taste of some snack foods and they are addicted, and parents have such a hard time, temper tantrums and fits until they get to have what they want. And lots of times it isn't those whole foods that are good for them because they've been led astray a little bit. So anyway, this is a really good book to read. It's not all about grocery stores, obviously. There was just a little snippet in there about that. And I appreciated that because it does seem like a jungle out there. Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
I would add to this list to reduce intake of salt.
Okay, well, we can add that. Yes. So I stuck with 5 things this time around, Fred. But that's certainly one of them for people who are sensitive to salt. And you're right in that we do get too much sodium in our diet. So,
especially in processed food.
Right, that's very true. That's really true. And that's something that we'll talk about in the food labels when we get to that part of it. So thanks for bringing that up. So we'll get right into that, reading food labels. So how many of you do that when you go to the grocery store now? Turn the label around, turn the can around, the package around. Mary does it. Who else does it? Fred does it all the time.
Ruby does.
Yeah, Ruby, Sandra. Okay, so if you're doing that, you're in a great place and it's a great start. So what have you learned? Those of you who have been reading labels, what have you learned from that process?
Serving size is important. Because something might look like it's low container, but then you find out you only got a 6-ounce thing of yogurt and it's got a lot of sugar in it. If you only had a 1/4 teaspoon, it'd be fine. So
amen. Yeah, and this example that I'm showing you here is for lasagna, a package of prepackaged lasagna. So you can see that a serving, there's 4 servings in this container, and a serving is a cup. That isn't really very much lasagna, is it? But you can see that it's got 280 calories. It's got 4.5 grams of saturated fat. If you ate 2 cups of it, you'd be up to you'd be up to 560 calories. You may have a 2,000 calorie a day, anywhere from 15 to 2,000 calorie a day
Mm-hmm.
target that you're after, but that's a big chunk of it. But especially then you're up to 9 grams of saturated fat. And just to be comparing that to what we should have, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of less than 23 grams of saturated fat, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we can have saturated fat. It's not so bad, but too much is too much. So less than 23 grams is safe. It's a little bit like that with sodium too. So what Fred was referring to here, we've got sodium to the tune of
850 milligrams. Woo.
How about that? And that's just for a cup.
Yeah, don't
So
have
what-
2 cups. Look at those carbs.
Yeah. Yes. So sodium, anybody care to take a guess what our upper limit on sodium is for a day?
1,500 it should be.
That's the ideal, and no
Mhm.
more than 2,300 milligrams.
Yeah.
2,300 milligrams is a teaspoon of salt. And
Wow.
what I just said to the folks in the last class, because we talked about that there too, is that 80 to 90% of the sodium that we get from processed foods like this.
Yes, that's why cooking is so important.
Yes, that's
Make
exactly
it
right.
fresh.
Yeah. So if you were to put a teaspoon or less than a teaspoon of salt into a small bowl and you just dipped into that throughout the day to season what you were making or to sprinkle it on your food at the table, see what you would have left at the end of the day. You may very well have salt left at the end of the day because you just didn't need that much. But this really blows it out of the water.
Yeah. Is Himalayan salt better for you in cooking and so forth?
It's still sodium. It's like sugar. Sugar is sugar is sugar, and sodium is salt. Well, salt is sodium chloride, so it's sodium chloride. So, salt is salt, but the white table salt is bleached, chemically processed to make it white and flowy and all of that. Whereas the Himalayan sea salt has more minerals. It's not as processed. So it's healthier for you from that standpoint.
Most of the sodium is probably coming from cheese that's making lasagna.
Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, cheese has got a lot of sodium in it, doesn't it?
Yep, could be the tomato sauce as well.
Yep.
So, yep, there's a lot of hidden sources of sodium. I picked up a can of beans the other day, which oftentimes a can of beans will have a lot of sodium in them. So you look for low sodium, and I picked up a can of, I think it was chickpeas, organic brand chickpeas. And I looked at the label expecting to see a lower amount of sodium, but what I didn't expect to see was 0. So it is possible to even find beans out there that have 0 sodium in them.
Wow.
And I always rinse canned beans anyway, no matter what their content is.
For sure, yeah. And I know Amy uses the aquafaba from the beans as an alternative